betting on politics is not for everybody, nor is betting on sports, nor is betting on the weather, which farmers do every day when they decide what day to water the plants and what day to put seed in the ground. So the fact of the matter is, insurance companies, they're betting on your longevity.
And welcome back to another edition of the Business of Betting podcast. I am your host, Jeff Edelstein, senior analyst at InGame. I'm joined today by John Aristotle Phillips, who is the founder of PredictIt. John, thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
I guess my first question is, can you believe it? This is where we are today with prediction markets. Can you believe it?
I ask myself that question with regard to life in general every morning and every evening when I go to bed. Can you believe what happened today? And I think this is just scratching the surface. We'll get into it, but I think this is just the opening inning of what's a very exciting transformation. And it's not just about sports betting or political betting. And it's not just about financial markets, but it's about really the way human beings calculate risk, which is sort of central to our existence. When you cross the street, calculate whether that bus is going to mow you down before you get to the other side. So you're always calculating risk, even if you don't know that you're doing it. And assigning probabilities or percentages it's not quite hardwired in the human brain, not yet anyway. So these markets have real potential to affect lots of different things, but we're trying to tell the future here, right? I'm talking about the markets themselves. They're trying to forecast future events. And since the ancient Greeks and before them, this has been a tough chore, but one that everybody wanted to do. You went to the oracle and you asked the oracle what was going to happen. And I think drugs were involved, but the oracle would tell you.
I'm already going to go off on a tangent because you said something that really just triggered me here. You said the human brain's not wired to think like in percentages and things like that. And I agree with you. Gamblers do, right? And I've come to realize in my own life, I've been like an active daily fantasy sports player for about 12 years now, right? And I realized that it changed the way I think now that I gamble every day, basically. And it's changed the way like I make my own life decisions. I don't see things as 100 or 0 anymore. I see things in terms, well, listen, if my data tells me that 51% of the time I'd be happier going to this restaurant, well, that's my choice. You know, I don't live in this black and white universe anymore. I live in a gray universe, and I got this for you. I'm happier for it. You know, not every decision has to be correct. Every decision now, I just need to lean on the side of where like the data is pointing me. And so you're right. I don't think non-gamblers think that way. So and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you think the rise of prediction markets is going to start changing the way humans think?
Absolutely. I think it's changing the way we think about politics already. And I suspect the same thing's happening in sports. We are thinking about probabilities. You know, your loud uncle at the end of the Thanksgiving dinner table has lots of opinions on lots of things, and they're usually wrong. But the fact of the matter is, once he has to put money where his mouth is, even Uncle Festa, it clears the head. It causes you to take a deep breath and think, boy, I really like this outcome. And I want to believe this is what's going to happen. Or if I'm a pessimist, I'm going to think this outcome's never going to happen because I like it. And it's an emotional hedge in that case. But yes, I think that the presence of these markets and the ability to translate risk into odds and prices is what it is. This is quite important. I'd say it's revolutionary, but it's been evolving for thousands of years. And this is the latest manifestation. So as I say, this is the first inning of a long, long game, a long season and lifetime. And so I'm very excited about the potential implications and where it's going to go.
Many, if not all of the companies that have like started in the last few years in the wake of PredictIt, which I'm going to get to the history of in a few minutes, are leaning heavily on sports. You know, like Kalshi, something like over 90% of their volume. Do you think, I'm not going to ask you what you think the courts or the Congress is going to end up doing when it comes to all that, because nobody knows in the end. Maybe you do. Maybe if you have an answer, I'll take it. But if sports isn't part of this at some point, does it curtail the growth? Or, I mean, it would obviously curtail the growth, but would it curtail like the future of prediction markets?
If sports were not a part of this, you're saying?
Yeah.
Sport is a really attractive endeavor for prediction markets to try to be applied to, in part because some of the existing models for sports forecasting and sports betting are broken, or they're showing signs of being not as popular as some of the prediction markets. The prediction markets aren't a panacea for everything, right? And I suspect sports, I don't know whether, to what extent sports is going to be the prevalent with prediction markets, but I know this. I mean, prediction markets are going to survive with or without sports, with or without politics, which is what we do. These markets and they're going to survive and thrive with or without federal or state regulation. Remember, these things were all offshore for a while, and they're going to go right back offshore if the regulations are so onerous or fatal to the conduct of these markets legally by businesses located in the United States. And I don't think anybody really wants that except for the offshore operators. But they're ready to take this business. They had it before, and they'll take it again. But I think ultimately, just about anything you could think of where it's worth predicting or forecasting the future, I think you're going to see a market for it. And that means you're going to be thousands of markets, prediction markets, not 2, not 5, not just PredictIt. There's going to be lots of them, and they're going to specialize. And businesses are going to specialize, are going to have news organizations. Every news organization, pretty much, in my opinion, this is a forecast for you, is going to have their own prediction market, because it costs a lot of money for Jeff to have a good show with good content on a regular basis. And it's a way to monetize the value of that content. And for a news organization, they go to tremendous trouble to put ink on paper or online to educate their readers as to what it's all about. What is likely to happen? Is this bill going to pass? Is this war going to get declared? Is peace going to break out in this region of the world? Is this scientific discovery going to take place in time to save my life? And these forecasts are going to be super important. And those who consume that expensive content are most likely the ones who are also going to be willing to put money on the outcome. And so if I'm offering content as a news organization that helps my readers predict more accurately of the future, of course I'm going to want to help my readers put money where their mouth is and bet full, even if they disagree with me. So I think these markets are going to really change the world.
Gotta call you a bull in this. All right, let's take it back to the beginning. Tell me how PredictIt came to be, where the idea came from, and what made you decide to get involved in all this. Just give me the genesis of it.
It was about 12 years ago. I'm the CEO of the parent company of PredictIt. So it's called Aristotle. And Aristotle is a political technology company. We started the company, my brother and I, when we graduated from college. It was slow going at first. We bootstrapped it brick by brick and eventually built up a company that was and is the largest nonpartisan provider of technology to people who want to influence decisions at the ballot box. What that means is if you're running for office, whether you're Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, whatever, chances are you have intersected with my company, Aristotle, because we've provided you either with software or voter data or something that is helpful if you're running for public office or running a referendum or an initiative at the ballot box. And so now this was 40 years ago that we started the company, and we had noticed a lot of our customers were public opinion pollsters because they would buy our voter data for samples from which to draw samples for their public opinion polling. And they were running into increasing difficulties. It's more expensive and more difficult, and more time consuming. And with the advent of cell phones, it changed the complexion of the public opinion polling business to make polling, it's still good for some things, and we can talk about that, but for other things, it's not so good. It's great if you want to know why somebody thinks the way they do and why somebody is likely to vote the way they tell you they're going to vote. To get to the why behind what's going to happen, that's public opinion polling, and survey research and focus groups are great. Expensive, but great. But if you want to know what's going to happen 6 months from now, a public opinion poll right now asking Jeff, the election were held tomorrow, for whom would you vote? All that means is tomorrow, Jeff is saying he would vote for X or Y. It's not that he's saying he's going to vote for that person 6 months from now. 6 months from now, that person may not even be in the ballot. And so markets are quite good at forecasting future events. They're not perfect, but they're better than public opinion polling, especially the further out you get from the event itself that you're trying to forecast. And markets are effective for a variety of reasons. There's a lot of people studying using our data anonymized that we provide to these universities. There's more than 100 universities and researchers that are using the PredictIt data anonymized to understand why markets are as accurate as they are and what happens when they're not accurate, right? Because that's interesting too. If the market misses and you get a black swan event, something completely unexpected happens that was at 10% or 20%, well, that's an interesting data point for the market because it tells you something about the market and the information that was flowing into the market. So anyway, sorry I took so long to answer this question. We were pushed by our customers, as we usually are, by some of our investors into looking at prediction markets as an alternative to polling. simply because polling was becoming more difficult. And the more we looked at it, the more we liked it, but we only liked it if we could find a legal way to do it. And this was about 14 years ago. There was a legal way to do it, but you had to get permission from the feds, from the federal government, meaning specifically the Commodities Future Trading Commission, to get it. Now, we found a precedent in the history of the Commodities Future Trading Commission where they had issued what's called a no action letter, which is basically a permission to operate a market of this type. And they'd issued it to the University of Iowa, to their business school at the University of Iowa to operate this mini market. We patterned our request on that request, and the Commodities Future Trading Commission, to everybody's surprise, including my own, approved the request and issued a no action letter to PredictIt. And we were off and running. And I think one of the things that happened, as you know, is there was a lot of litigation around PredictIt because we grew so fast. And the regulators, I think, were stunned at how quickly it had grown. And some of them don't like fast growth markets, incorrectly, in my opinion, and in the opinion of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, to which the case went. We sued the Commodities Future Trading Commission when they tried to revoke that no action letter, and we won. It went to the Federal Court of Appeals, second highest court in the land. And the court ruled that the CFTC could not act in an arbitrary and capricious fashion, which is what they found their actions to be. And the PredictIt was here to stay. And so that really got a lot of attention. We had, by that point, we've got hundreds of thousands of traders. And then we've also got competition because other people followed in our footsteps. And also some of them did some very groundbreaking legal work of their own to establish that these markets are legal. And so we've been operating PredictIt for almost 14 years. And it's been a great ride. It continues to be, it's certainly, look, I'll tell you this, Jeff, it's the most fun business I've ever been involved in. It's fascinating to look at how the market's evolving. Maybe it's a footnote, maybe it's a side note that it's changing the way these financial markets operate. It's creating billionaires and multimillionaires and a whole class of traders who are focused on these markets. It's also had the effect, Jeff, as an engagement tool. This gets back to the news organizations and the like. PredictIt is an engagement tool on steroids. When you have even a little bit of money, even a $1 winner take all contract, you are laser focused on what's happening in that election or that campaign. And the same is true with sports. The research shows that if you have a little bit of skin in the game on a game, you consume 7 times as much information about those players, that game, the weather, everything to do with the outcome of the game. And that's because you've got some skin in the game. And so what's better than having people who are, in a country where our attention is divided and opinions on everything, but to have a way to encourage people to consume real news rather than fake news. Because if you're consuming fake news, you're going to lose your money. And that's been proven again and again and again. And if you consume real news, accurate news, and it takes a little bit of work to do that, then you're more likely to succeed in a prediction market.
The guardrails seem to be, self-imposed and few and far between right now as the industry is growing. Is there concern in your end about that? You see some of these war markets, death markets, things along those lines. Do you fear that, some of these companies are getting out a little bit beyond their skis, that they're going further than what might be considered for the public good?
Yeah, I share the concern that there needs to be careful but meaningful regulation on these markets, just like there is on all markets. And much of the activity that people are concerned about with prediction markets is already illegal. So trading on improperly obtained inside information, that's already illegal. But I think, look, in the middle of these legal fights, we petitioned the Commodities Future Trading Commission to use their authority, which they had and still have, to proactively create a regulatory framework for prediction markets. And it was crickets. Nobody wanted to actually do something about it. And I'm not talking about the CFTC here. I'm talking about the Congress and the like. There was little action at the time when the regulations could have been proactively formulated. But there needs to be regulation. And you don't want too much regulation. As I say, if it's the wrong kind of regulation or it's silly regulation, this stuff's just going to go offshore. And you get no regulation, no consumer protection, no protections against insider trading, nothing. And you have people publishing odds on supposed political campaigns that are bogus, right? That's not a good thing.
Well, I was about to say Politico, I don't have it in front of me, but they had a story that I think they ran their own poll where they teamed up with somebody, and Americans, they don't want to bet on politics. They think it's wrong that we shouldn't be betting on politics. What are they missing?
So here's the missing part. So first of all, I was interviewed for that article, and I know the reporter, he's a great reporter. Right? But I think it was easy to misinterpret that Americans don't like betting on politics. And majority of the Americans don't have an opinion one way or another. And betting on politics is not for everybody, nor is betting on sports, nor is betting on the weather, which farmers do every day when they decide what day to water the plants and what day to put seed in the ground. So the fact of the matter is, insurance companies, they're betting on your longevity, and they're betting on your ability to drive a car without crashing into a telephone pole. So the fact of the matter is, betting on stuff, the way to create regulation, meaningful regulation for prediction markets or markets in general or any other activity, is not to outlaw something that you have some results in public opinion poll that say some people don't like vehemently don't like prediction markets, and some people vehemently like prediction markets. Fortunately, it's not up to either of them. We think these prediction markets, especially the political prediction markets, are constitutionally protected political speech. And I'll stop there because that's an argument that people can have as to whether it is or is not. But whether you find somebody else's political speech objectionable is not the basis on whether that political speech is permitted and in fact protected and should be protected by every American.
When you look at Kelsey and like rumors now that that the valuation might skyrocket up to $40 billion, do you feel like that perhaps is there any wishful thinking or on your part that like, man, I wish we went down this path a little bit. Like, I wish we were a little bit more aggressive in what we were doing, or are you just happy where you are and like happy to see it all grow around you?
I get asked that question sometimes. I'm considered to be a pretty aggressive guy. And so I think we have pushed the envelope to the correct extent. I'm not being sued, right? I'm not in a fight with state regulators. I'm not in a fight with the federal regulators. We won our litigation. There's nothing wrong with, if you have to fight, then it's worth fighting for. And I think there's going to be some compromise between the state and the feds. This is ultimately, at the end of the day, in the opinion of some, it's all about money, and there's enough money to go around. And these markets are going to, as we said at your first question today, these markets are going to be sustained. They're going to prevail. They're going to exist no matter what some government appointee likes or doesn't like, or a particular congressperson likes or doesn't like. These things are way too powerful. They're way too useful. The biggest beneficiary of these markets is not Kalshi and PredictIt. It's not even the traders. It's not even the traders who are in the markets. The biggest consumers and beneficiaries of these markets and the odds that they produce are people who are looking for signals as to what the future holds. So people who consume the odds without betting on the odds are the beneficiaries. And that's just about everybody, I'm happy to tell you, in a free society, in a democratic society. So I know a lot of people don't like public opinion polling, but that's not a reason to outlaw it. And a lot of people don't like negative political campaign advertisements, but they work if they're done correctly. And the fact of the matter is, it's part of the democratic speech, politically protected speech in the case of campaign commercials. So just because something isn't for you doesn't mean it should be prohibited or somehow it should be chased offshore.
This is an opinion of yours that I think has been a through line through your entire life. I'm talking to you today for about 5 miles down the road from where you decided that you were going to show everyone that anyone could build a nuclear bomb if they wanted to. I want to say something before I ask you the question. I just want to say something. When I took this gig, hosting this podcast, I said to the boss, I said, I'll do it happily. Thank you for the opportunity. But I don't want this to just be a gambling podcast. I want to talk to people about their life, their history, things that are a little bit different and, a little bit off the beaten path. And so when I found out I was going to be interviewing you and I started doing my, quick perfunctory research, I'm like, holy fucking shit, this guy wrote a paper to build a nuclear bomb and was famous for it. So here we are at the 22-minute mark or whatever of this podcast. For the first and only time in my life, I'm going to be able to ask somebody, so what made you decide to write a paper on how to build a nuclear bomb?
Thank you for bringing this up, and I'll put it in the right context. I get asked this infrequently. I get asked more about PredictIt than I do about my junior thesis at Princeton, but I'm happy to talk about it. So first of all, I was a physics major at Princeton. I had some unbelievably talented professors in the physics department and generally speaking in college. And one of them was an eminent theoretical physicist named Freeman Dyson. And Dyson, the books written about him, and he's written books of his own. He's passed away. He was a mentor to me and had a huge impact on my life. And Freeman was teaching a course in nuclear proliferation with some other professors at what was then called the Woodrow Wilson School at Princeton, the International Affairs. And so the question was raised, because it was about security challenges and spread of nuclear weapons. And the question was raised in the seminar, is it possible that a terrorist group or criminal organization could get their hands on an atomic bomb? And there was a sort of lively discussion, and the general consensus at the time, not in that class, because these were very knowledgeable people, but general consensus was in government circles like that, you didn't need to worry about terrorists, about safeguarding the raw ingredients of an atomic bomb, the plutonium and the uranium. You didn't need to worry about safeguarding that because it would take another Los Alamos project to design an atomic bomb. And the Los Alamos project, as we all know, had thousands of scientists, billions of dollars, and that was in World War II. So the Los Alamos project was considered to be the reason why you didn't have to worry about tightening up security on plutonium and uranium. And of course, if you have low security around plutonium and uranium, that fosters a worldwide trade in plutonium and uranium. And the question was, isn't it possible these shipments are going to get hijacked or bribed or something? The raw ingredients to build a bomb is going to get into the wrong hands. And so it was a really important issue for people in the know. And on the basis of that, I asked Freeman if, as my junior thesis, I could try to design an atomic bomb. And he was skeptical at first, as he seldom was on most great ideas. But on this one, he was skeptical. But he said, look, I can't help you. I've got security clearance. I'm not going to be able to tell you anything. It's confidential. And he didn't. And so I went to work. It took a semester and turned in the paper at the end of the semester. And the rest is sort of history. The design was never published. I'll tell you that. So it was locked up, but it made the point and became an issue shortly thereafter in the debate on the floor of the United States Senate, when the debate had to do with the sale of plutonium reprocessing facilities to a third world country, which was, by anybody's estimate, was eager to get an atomic bomb. It was Pakistan, and had been saying they have no interest in using this plutonium reprocessing facility, which they were about to receive delivery of for purposes of bomb building. They were only interested in peaceful nuclear power, except, Jeff, that they were caught trying to buy an atomic bomb design from an American undergraduate at the same time. So that was the genesis of the project. So we've talked about something other than betting, but that's how it happened.
Explain to me, or maybe explain to yourself, maybe if it's the first time anyone's asked you, how do you go from physics student creating design for nuclear bombs to the political aspect? I mean, it seems like two different brains are at work here. I guess he gave up dreams of becoming a famous physicist to get into this other world, but I am curious, what's the story that you tell yourself, how you went from one to the other?
Well, let's put it in perspective. I was never going to be a famous physicist like Dyson. I just didn't have the chops. Okay. So that was never on the menu. The background of it was I became more and more interested in the proliferation issue as a result of the A-bomb design and the notoriety that came with it. I became quite passionate about stopping the spread of nuclear weapons. And I felt like I could have a small but important sort of contribution to make in that regard, as long as people would pay attention. And so that's how I got involved in politics. And it was very sort of a logical transition. The political process. First of all, I grew up in a family. I'm Greek. Both my parents were Greek. So I'm American, but I was Greek American. And so I grew up in a family. In our family, democracy was revered. Like the democratic process, the process of voting, it was almost a religious experience. And not illogically, right? There was belief in the things the Supreme Court does and says, and division of power and all that. So I grew up appreciating the democratic process and considering it to be quite precious. I also, because of things that were happening in Greece and elsewhere, Greece being, one of the birthplaces of democracy, there was a junta, there was a military dictatorship there for a while. And as a little kid, I was there with my younger brother and my parents during a period of time when the military dictatorship had taken over and really cracked down on the democracy. And then we were eventually driven from power. But that was an experience that was really, as a little boy, it was an experience that was seared into my psyche. I mean, it was quite shocking. And so, as it was for a lot of people in Greece at the time. So anyway, the democratic process was of interest to me. And the thing that's interesting about it, I like the process itself as much as I like the policy, perhaps more so. I really like the process of how you get elected, how you help somebody get elected, how you participate in the formation of legislation, even as a teenager. So I was always interested in that. And so it was logical that when we started this business, which had to do with political technology, and people weren't using computers in campaigns in those days. This is in the early 1980s.
Let's go to the nuclear proliferation question for a second. I look around and I see Any country that has a nuclear bomb is being run by, an insane person. That's basically what I'm looking at, right? Are we better, worse, the same when it comes to this stuff? I mean, it is, at the risk of getting a little too far afield here, it is kind of weird to put your head on the pillow every night knowing that we could blow ourselves up at any given moment. I feel like we are technological gods with middle school brains. I mean, you've been following this, obviously, you've been interested in this your whole life. I mean, are we getting better or worse? Are you more afraid, less afraid of where humanity's headed when it comes to all this shit?
I'm less afraid than I was 10 years, 20 years, 50 years ago. I think, strangely enough, the threat of nuclear annihilation has perhaps prevented the kind of conflict since World War II that is a civilization-ending event, right? So now that can change, of course. And would it be better if there were no nuclear weapons? I think probably so. Would there be less war or more war? I don't know the answer to that. It's very possible there'd be more warfare, as we had 2 world wars prior to the invention of the atomic bomb. We've had none since. We've had wars, but the fact of the matter is, so I'm not an advocate for nuclear weapons, okay? I'm also not of the belief that we should eliminate all nuclear weapons unilaterally. I'd like to think I'm somewhat realistic about it, but the fact of the matter is I am less afraid when my head hits the pillow at night than I was earlier. But that's not to say, look, I think there are a lot of risks. What's going on in Ukraine is, I frequently wonder if today's the day that Putin's going to flip a nuke. And that's a very sad, sobering, horrible prospect. But the question's got to be asked.
Well, let's bring it back to prediction markets for a second. What role, we've talked about like a lot of different types of technology and thought experiments here. What about AI, which is, this like completely bursting on the scene, changing the way people work, changing the way I think people think. What role do you think AI is going to play in prediction markets and politics as we move forward?
So I've been thinking a lot about that. And I don't think I'm probably the wrong person to offer an accurate forecast on that, because I understand the power that AI has and how it's going to change the job market. I think I understand how it's going to change the job market, how it's going to change the way people bet on sports, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's hard to forecast what the impact's going to be, other than to say, well, there will be fewer lawyers being paid $1,500 an hour to do the work that a computer can do in 10 minutes or pennies. That's pretty clear to me. What's not clear to me is that the tools being developed to sift through large quantities of information is going to fundamentally change some of these forecasts that are coming out. Human judgment is pretty powerful, and I am not, regrettably, as knowledgeable as to the forefront of AI. So maybe I should be more concerned than I am. I'm not saying it's not going to have an impact. What I'm saying is it'd be premature for me to predict that it's going to change everything. There's still going to be lawyers. They're still going to be making $1,500 an hour, but they'll be doing a lot less work for companies like mine.
So, all right, here's something that I feel that you can forecast. When we go to sleep tonight, we wake up in 10, 15 years. What does the prediction market landscape look like in America and the world?
I don't know, but I think the odds are that we're all going to have our favorite prediction markets that are going to be tied to other things that we do, where we work, what we read, what we do for fun, how long we live, what decisions we make in terms of our own personal health benefits and risks, the medicines to take and the like. I think prediction markets are going to fundamentally change those things in terms of how human beings interact with the environment around them, because we're going to have these odds on just about everything. Maybe to the point where people are sick of the odds. They defy the odds. They want to ignore the odds, which is perfectly okay. But I think we're going to be inundated with odds making on all kinds of endeavors. When you go to insure your car, the price you pay for that auto insurance is going to be intimately connected to what the prediction markets say about your skills as a driver and likelihood of crashing your car.
I can even see this. This is so stupid, and I'm going to sound stupid for saying it, but like, there's nothing that prevents one day my wife throwing a market up saying, well, Jeff, put the dishes from, in the dishwasher instead of the sink, 8 cents on the yes. And like, I'm incentivized now to get those dishes into the dishwasher.
I don't think that's stupid. I think it's probably smart.
I mean, it's silly, it's stupid, but you can do this for everything. And I guess at the end of the day, really, if you really take this like to the end point, it's the economy stupid, right? As James Carville said. And like, it's people vote with their pocketbook and everyone is incentivized by dollars and cents. And the prediction markets can have a way of really influencing people's behavior in that regard.
But there's also long shot bias, right? So people sometimes do things that they think are long shots because they're long shots, and they tend to overestimate the odds, if you will. They're not really overestimating the odds. They are, but they aren't. It's their reaction to what the odds are and their impulse to beat the odds. And so that's part of the social motivation of, behind prediction markets. There's also the emotional hedge, which we mentioned earlier, right? I want this to happen, but I'm concerned that it's not going to happen. So I'm going to take a bet against what I want to have happen because that way I'll be a winner either way, that sort of thing. So a lot of that goes on.
Yeah, I've heard, like that. I hate Trump, but I'm going to put money on him to win, right? All right. Last question before I let you go. And I appreciate all the time you've given me this afternoon. And I think we touched on this in the very beginning of the conversation. But again, this is still so brand new to most Americans, the idea of prediction markets, but it really has exploded in the last 6-8 months. How do you think it's changed us that we don't even know yet? If you follow what I'm saying, how is the culture already changed as a result of this? But we're still nobody's caught up to it yet.
I think the changes that the prediction markets are going to affect have only just started. If you look at all the people trading on all the prediction markets in the world since the beginning of time, it's very small percentage of the people who have done it so far. By the time these things really get up ahead of steam, and, kudos to my friends at Kalshi and Kali and elsewhere who are killing it. I think this is just that, most of the traders on these prediction sites are men. It just happens to be the way it is. It's 80%, 90%. Some of the sites advertise that they're trying to pick up more women, and they are trying to pick up more women, but they're not succeeding in great numbers. The population is not even being really talked to with respect to these prediction markets. Huge percentage of people who don't really care about sport aren't going to be engaging in sports prediction markets. Nevertheless, 80 or 90% of the big guys' activity is around sports. But forecasting scientific discoveries and cultural events, and as well as politics and policy and the weather, these are going to be huge areas where prediction markets have a huge impact. And we've just scratched the surface. So these things are they're here to stay. There may be a hiccup with regulation, but it's going to get worked out. It's going to be compromises. It's going to be okay. And we're watching a very exciting development in the history of mankind. And I'm as interested as anybody else in where this goes.
Fantastic. It's fascinating. It is. That's for sure. You also, sir, are very fascinating. You've written a paper on how to build an A-bomb. You've created PredictIt. I've yet to complete a Lego set. So, you win. I'm going to 1-0 John versus Jeff.
Oh, that's kind of you, but we're on the same boat. So thank you.
John Aristotle Phillips, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Jeff.